Welcome back to a exploration discovery series with Coffee with Samso. We started this series a while back and we are continuing with bringing back these stories to you guys. Today we are talking about the Pegasus discovery, noted to Northern Star Resources, but it was a history that dates back to Barrick days when they owned the project. This is in the Kundana province. And we are going to be talking to Darren Cooke, who gave a presentation in 2015 and effectively is the spokesperson for the project. In 2014, it was hailed as the best discovery in the decade. Its name comes from the winged stallion from Greek mythology called Pegasus. At the time when the project was unveiled, it had a resource of 2.1 million tons at a grade of 11.4 grams per ton for a total of about 763,000 ounces. Bill Beament from Northern Star Resources claimed at that time he can see a 1 million ounce deposit at Pegasus, which is accessible through an underground drive less than 350 meters from Northern Star's Rubicon mine at that time. Well, he was correct, and this discovery has always been on my mind as it was a great example, finding 1 million ounces of gold within a Swiss cheese of drilling. So our aim today is to try and peel back the layers to better understand the technical story, the geology, the mineralogy, the exploration strategy, the corporate story, hopefully, and most importantly, documenting a significant part of our Australian mineral resource history. Before we go and continue the Coffee with Samso, I'd just like to take this moment to encourage people to follow us, to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to give us that tick and likes that helps us with the channel, and also follow us on our website. We've been publishing a lot of content recently. So as usual, grab your favorite drink, sit back and enjoy what is the continuation of our exploration discovery series. Thank you. Welcome to another Coffee with Samso. As I said in an intro, this is the continuation of our exploration discovery series. I've decided to keep this happening, and I'm very glad I did, because now I've got the Pegasus story. I've got the CEO of FireFly Metals Limited, ASX code is FFM, Darren Cooke, here, and he is going to tell us everything about Pegasus. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks a lot, Noel. Great to be here.
Look, it was a search for you, and thanks to our mutual friend, Brett Lucas. He put me in touch with you. And look, welcome to Coffee with Samso, Exploration Discovery Series, as I say. Look, you were involved in it. We had a chat previously about what the ins and outs of the thing. And look, as we all know, the discovery is a team game. It's not about one man. I guess this conversation is about the rest of the team as well, who have been involved in it, and it spreads over a couple of companies, I believe. So look, give us a rundown on you, a foundation of yourself and how you became involved, and obviously you're a geode, etc. So far away.
No problem. Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Noel, I'm a geologist by background and predominantly in gold and work for some pretty big companies, Barrick and Newmont at the Super Pit, Newmont at Kelly in the Northern Territory, and then Barrick around the Kalgoorlie district. And at the time of the Pegasus discovery, I was the manager of geology and long-term planning for Barrick in the Kalgoorlie district. So we were looking after the Kanowna Belle mine, the Kundana mine, and all of the regional exploration and all the long-term planning. So it's really great. It was a while ago now that we first really recognised the potential and made the actual discovery. It's great to think back to those days, because it's a unique time in history, I think, and exciting discovery.
Look, it as I said, it kind of started 2006. I only became aware of it around 2015, and I believe maybe it was you who was presenting when I was there, and it captured me, the whole concept of being able to find that amount of ounces of gold within, I call it a Swiss cheese of drilling, right? So can you run through that, 2006, 2011 and help us set the scene for things to come?
Yeah, look, there was really two aspects to the discovery in my view. One was the technical aspects, and then one was what I'd term the political aspects, and, getting budgets, working with big companies, being sold to Northern Star during that process of actually developing the deposit. So it was actually really unique from a political point of view. But from a technical point of view, what was really amazing was the first hole into that actual deposit was drilled in 2005 by Placidome. So it's not as if it was discovered and drilled by us in 2011 to 2013. But what our team did was recognise the potential of the drill hole that the previous groups had walked away from. The team that we had really understood the nature of the deposit, and it is a very high nugget gold deposit. And what that translates into is that you can have a really great hit, and then like literally metres away, it can be a lot lower grade. So I guess really understanding the importance and significance of that intersection that was drilled in 2005 was a key to it. And the other thing I'd say about the discovery is one of the key driving factors behind it was we had a group of long-term planning engineers in our group, and we were running out of ore, we were running out of places to go, and we got a whole heap of new geologists in. We restructured the team, and that collaboration between the engineering group and the geology group was really fundamental in turning what was just a single drill hole into a multi-million ounce deposit.
At what moment was that? I mean, that was in that period 2005 to 2011, or was that 2011 when you guys go, hey? Because if I'm not mistaken, there was already existing mining and etc. when you guys looked at it. Am I correct?
Yeah, nearby there was. It was 2011 to 2012 that really unlocked it, and I'd come across from the super pit into Barrick at that time to take on that management role. And the first thing I like to do when I start somewhere is to say, okay, let's look through the data, because you'd be amazed at what ore bodies hide in databases unrecognised. So, the team was scouring through the database, looking at flagging, really interesting hits. And then, you ask the geological questions, why, what does this mean? And has it closed off the potential of it? And, comprehensively, the answer was no. And, I think it takes a different mindset to sort of mine those databases. It's really easy to think of reasons why something's not there, but then actually challenging it and thinking of why you could make the discovery, and then backing your geological knowledge to actually chase a new idea. It's pretty important.
Just to give us some context, that moment where you walked in and said, look, let's look at the data set.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Are we talking weeks of work, days of work, or months of work?
Yeah, look, I'd say months of work, because it was a historically very, very well drilled area. Like, we're talking Kundana, like it's a 10 million ounce camp now. It was literally hundreds of metres away from the Rubicon mine. So it wasn't as if it was a greenfields area, and there would have been at least 100 holes into the area already, but they were very shallow, and at the end of the day, it was almost pattern drilling what was there without giving any thought to the geological nature of the ore body. And these are narrow vein, high grade nuggety structures, and the structures are very continuous, but the high grade shoots within those areas are very discrete and structurally controlled. So, the concept that we had was, the shoots were plunging in a different orientation than what had been thought previously. Therefore, the target wasn't closed off, it was still open, and we were able to prove that with the drilling.
Are we talking about opposite direction? Are we talking about steeper as opposed to shallow when at first thought?
Look, that whole area's got a pretty complex geological history, and the thought was originally that these plunging chutes were subvertical. So part of the reason they'd walked away from it was that you had a really good intersection, and then they drilled directly beneath it, and had a duster. They didn't get anything out of it. So they thought, okay, well, that's hasn't got any extent to it, so let's move on. But when you actually plot up the information from the other deposits around it, including what was across the road at La Mancha at the time, we actually found that there was 2 plunge orientations to it like that. And the theory was that where they had drilled a dead spot was actually, you could fit the plunging chutes around it, and that turned out to be the case. So it was far more extensive than what the geological model that they were assumptions they'd made was pointing to.
So what the people I've talked about who worked in that whole Kundana province say to me, it's very narrow, and once you get out of the mineralized zone, it's just dead. There's no halo, there's no signals or anything. So did that kind of thinking, was that kind of thinking the restrictive component to thinking differently?
Yeah, look, it was certainly a contributing factor to it, because although the overall halo of the mineralisation isn't quite high, the structural geology is the key to working that out. And there are some micro indicators in there when you look really, really closely at the information as well. So, but the key thing is the structural information, plotting up grade trends, and just looking at what individual intersection means. I mean, you look at a deposit like Raleigh, and I think from the original discovery, 2 out of every 3 holes was uneconomic, and that Raleigh deposit was like a 1 million ounce deposit. So it's just understanding the nature of the distribution of the gold.
I mean, looking back now, I mean, if I asked a question, was it easy to define? How would you answer that?
I'd say that in terms of easy to define, I'd say once we understood it, yes. It still needed a lot of drilling because of that nugget effect of the gold. But once we'd unlocked the key to the geological interpretation, it was relatively easier to define, and it led to other discoveries as well, such as the Millennium mine that Northern Star mined after they'd taken over the assets. So yeah, it was easy once we'd worked it out.
That was the thinking that helped discovery, the thinking developed finding Pegasus, helped define Millennium? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that double plunging chute, there was a deposit there that was mined in the 1990s called Centenary, and it appeared to be a single blob. But if that double plunging chute theory was accurate, there should have been down plunge blind mineralisation to the north of that, and when we've drilled it, that actually turned out to be the case. So Northern Star actually put a decline in and mined that.
Okay. And that, I assume that mining that plunging chute, secondary chute, I assume it would only be economic because of the main chute that allows you to get there, because it's further down.
No, that's right, but they put in a decline and they could actually access it from the other mine, so it made it a lot easier to get to. But the point is that the one exploration discovery and that understanding unlocked pretty much the entire belt, if you like.
Because that kind of thinking is very similar to what I think I'm jumping my question here, but like the Hemi was a similar situation as well. And Never was and then I draw Poseidon, which is Higginsville, where Samantha Gold had one good hit but never followed it, and then the vodka came in. That was history.
Yeah, well, I think the key takeaway is that well drilled doesn't mean well explored.
Yeah.
And you see that in the Goldfield, and I was with Northern Star Business Development for 6 or 7 years with Northern Star, and we looked at a lot of data sets, and in first look, when you look at a surface map, it looks like it's been pin-cushioned, but when you actually dig into the quality of data, the nature of the data, and what's actually hiding in there, the key thing that people have to understand, that just because it's been well drilled doesn't mean it's been well explored. They're two very, very different things.
Because the way you analyse for things, or what you analyse but you didn't analyse, that was a key indicator.
Yeah.
And the list goes on, but it's kind of those complexities that technical people sweat on, but outside people wonder why it's taken so long.
No, that's exactly right. And sometimes it just takes a step back to try and break some of the preconceived geological ideas. Like what I've found through my career is quite often geological interpretations morph into fact, and people end up trying to fit the information to fit the model rather than just independently unbiased way looking at the information and then adjusting the model. So a lot of people get caught up in this model bias, and that inhibits a lot of exploration discoveries. And if you can break that, quite often that's how you make these discoveries in these mature areas.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I'm one of those guys, and I had John Ronsky here talking about things, and we're always talking about how, people have this model and then they're fixated on the model.
Yeah.
But as we all know, every deposit, I'm sure every deposit you looked at is never the same, right?
It's like people, they're all different.
We're all different, exactly.
Similarities, but all different. But same thing's happening at Green Bay at the moment with FireFly. It's a VMS deposit, but it's not a typical VMS. It's a lot larger scale. This is a VMS now that's got like over 3 kilometres of strike on it, and rapidly growing from its current 60 million tonnes. So, it's a bit larger scale, and we've seen that all through every place I've worked. You've seen examples where that model-driven exploration really slows down discovery.
Look, I read a report that at that time when Northern Star took over the East Kundana JV in 2014, there was an inferred resource of 355,000 ounces, 9.8 grams per tonne. And I'm afraid to say, but I think maybe it was in a news article, and Bill may have said, look, he had a lot of confidence that this would be 1 million ounce. So my question is, other than, promotional talk to the market, how much confidence or understanding did one need to have to be saying that kind of stuff at that point in time? Right?
Yeah, look, it was really interesting. Like Bill, I found from the very early days of Northern Star, really understood the geology and the potential, and it's really unusual for an engineer to have that sort of level of understanding and confidence in it. But look, what I would say is he understood enough to know that we had the broad scout drilling. You had the history to know that there was a prize there, and what he had was the really aggressive nature to go after it and make it happen. And that was really helped unlock that deposit. When we were with Barrick after we'd discovered it, we were really struggling to get traction, to get the money in to drill it out and develop it. Within 3 weeks of Northern Star being there, they doubled the number of drill rigs and agreed to commence a decline to get out there to drill out Pegasus from underground, which is exactly what you needed to do. So, I know there was a fair bit of promotional stuff, but it was very much backed by the geological science behind it.
I mean, the whole Northern Star story is about everything you just described, where they... I remember the day when Bill was sitting in a 3x3 room in Balcutta, and to where it is today. That kind of... It had to have that kind of thinking, and otherwise it wouldn't have happened. No,
that's exactly right. And it was really funny. I was on the sales team for Barrick, selling those assets to the various parties and doing all the site visits. And I still remember that first meeting with Northern Star. They filled the room full of people, and you could really tell the difference between that mining and entrepreneurial spirit, and you could tell that it was going to be really well. It was going to be a good future. My view is every mine has its right size owner, and back in those days, like those Kalgoorlie assets were less than 2% of Barrick's global production. So when we were looking for capital to drill, when we were looking for investment to sustain and grow our operations, they were putting them into far better projects than this. But what was a forgotten asset under Barrick all of a sudden became a key asset under Northern Star, and the focus and the investment in drilling and growth really paid off.
One of the questions I wanted to ask, and I think we've covered some of it, but I think it's still valid, is when you look at what you guys did there at that moment, when you guys are looking through all the data and you're hypothesizing, could it be this, could it be... But looking back now, was there a sliding door moment where you thought, we're damn lucky to have gone down that road as opposed, because we all know there's an element of luck in everything we do, but like the true gambler, we always scientify what we do, right? And was there a moment where you now looking back, oh, if we there was maybe 2 options or 3 options, because if we went there, we wouldn't have found it.
Yeah, look, I think there was a couple of moments there that really stood out for me. One was, you know, I mentioned earlier towards the start that it's not just the technical aspects of a discovery, but the politics. And, you know, we were in competition when we were with Barrick to get capital against all the other projects around the place. And although we had a lot of support locally in Australia from the Barrick Geology Group, when they compared our projects and our requests to, you know, some of the great operations in Nevada and the big assets that they had, that, you know, we weren't getting the money that we needed to actually do our jobs, and it was really frustrating, to be honest. And I think Bill described me as a frustrated geologist after I joined Northern Star. But one of the great turning points, I would say, was I remember my general manager at the time, Graham Ovens, sitting in there, and we had a joint venture partner, Anton Billis from Randon Tribune. We ended up drilling a few of those holes into Pegasus without the approved exploration budget. We grabbed money from elsewhere, such was our conviction that it was going to work, and actually drilled some of the holes with outside of the exploration budget, so it was more out of the operating budget. And we needed support from both Graham and the joint venture partners, Anton Billis and the guys, to actually do that. And I think that was a big contributor to it.
Okay. And you mentioned Anton and, you know, what, and JV partners, and we all know JV is a hit or miss. Yeah. You either have a good partner or you don't. What's he like over that journey through this?
Look, I'd heard all the stories, right? And it sounds like Anton's a fairly colourful guy. I actually got to know him pretty well during that process, and ended up getting quite a bit of respect for him, because he was very supportive on advancing that project and really taking it forward. But yeah, you know, so it was really great to see Anton get behind it. And look, he just wanted what was best for the project, and sometimes, you know, things weren't going quickly enough for his liking. But overall, he was very supportive, and he understood the geology well. He was a good JV partner.
Look, at that point, Northern Star, I'm picking this up from articles that I see here and there. But, you know, Northern Star, Barrick, you know, they sold the asset, you know, and for 75 million. And you guys start making the discovery. So at that point, did you guys think 75 million was cheap?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really funny just looking at the press releases when it was sold. Like Barrick said, yeah, we're disposing of high-cost, short-life assets. Same acquisition Northern Star were describing as a long-life company making assets, and, you know, describing the same thing. And I guess, you know, some things were accurate about that, because it's, you know, depends on the ownership. But what I would say is that, you know, we knew those discoveries were going to be there. We really understood the implications of what we were doing, but like I said, it comes back to the right size owner for the mine. But I think the great thing that Northern Star was able to do was really understand the potential and investing in drilling. I mean, you know, drilling is the key to making those discoveries.
Okay. Pegasus was, as I said, in a developed field. It was, as mentioned, it's close to the Rubicon mine and things like that. And so, if it is there a measure where, if it was further away or something, that you guys wouldn't have looked at Pegasus the same way and said, yeah, I don't think it's gonna work?
Yeah, well, we actually took the opposite approach and actually stood back and looked a lot further on that overall trend. So we had 14 kilometres of that trend on our leases. So rather than just focusing in just next to the deposit, we actually went back to basics, did all the soil sampling again, did early stage drilling, did geophysics over it, and, you know, took the big picture approach as well. So sometimes in Brownfields exploration, it's easy to get focused in on where the mining has been. But one of the great things you can do in brownfields exploration is to step back and look at the bigger picture and apply. It's like a fractal thing, you apply the micro learnings on the broader scale, and quite often that works well. And we identified some great targets, regionally outside of Pegasus. So to answer your question, I think we would have kept looking outside as well because we wanted to unlock the bigger picture.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Look, in the last 5 years, I think we touched on this. We've had this discovery of, Hemi within the midst of drilling and next to it. Yeah. They had, like, at that point in time, 1.4 million ounces of gold that they were trying to promote. Yeah. Hemi wasn't even born at that time, and then I think the value now is Hemi and not the rest in some way. Then we had Never Never with Spartan, again, right next to, not that far from the office, I believe. Yeah. Then we had Azure, who discovered these massive pegmatite dikes within a nickel province, because it was a nickel sulfide story. Yep. Then you had Delta Lithium with the gold and lithium, and Mount Holland Earl Grey came from a gold mine. Do you think there is something else out there?
Yeah, there has to be. 100% there has to be. I mean, we've just seen too many examples. Like I said before, well drilled does not mean well explored, and there's been a lot of drilling done in Western Australia in the last 100 years. So, to me that gives real optimism about what else can be out there. Once again, it's trawling through historic data, it's thinking differently, it's testing new concepts and not being model bound.
Because there's a lot of these kind of stories, and I'm not saying everyone's got the same potential, etc., but you kind of, if you were looking back and thinking, I wonder if they missed anything, or Dalgaranga, which is Never Never. It was like less than, I don't know, they were trying to mine less than a gram at one point in time. Complete failure, whatever. Never Never is, I think, what did it sell for? Like 1 point something billion or something? So when you look at it, do you think that, a Pegasus is sitting somewhere, you just need to have the wallet and the nous to go and chase it?
Yeah, the wallet and the mindset, I think, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Simon is an ex-Northern Star person as well, and I think I've heard Simon talk on Never Never a number of times, and that hole was hiding in the database as well. So
it had to be, right?
It's a very similar story to Pegasus, and I don't see why that isn't possible elsewhere.
Yeah. Look, I must admit, looking at Pegasus and understanding it more, the way I look at Brownfield was always, they're just going to redo the existing mine. But now I'm thinking Brownfield exploration is more like the exploration is the value, unlocking that value potentially, as opposed to greenfields, right? Greenfields, you're playing with no data, you're creating. Whereas here is that might actually be simpler. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say simpler, but what I would say is that the best place to find a deposit is near an existing deposit, because obviously all the ingredients are there to form ore, and quite often it's a lot more complicated and not as straightforward. So there are always opportunities from a brownfields point of view to actually make discoveries, and I think when you actually rationalise it back into a cost per tonne or a cost per ounce discovery rate, you get far better bang for your buck from brownfields exploration. And the capital cost to get the projects off the ground, the time to get the projects off the ground, the costs are lower, the time's quicker, and you can really generate value for shareholders a lot quicker. So I see tremendous value in brownfields exploration. In fact, if I had a choice between brownfields and greenfields, I'd take brownfields any day of the week.
But when I look at it, and I'm not sure, obviously you've got more experience than me in that sector. When I hear brownfield exploration, I'm actually hearing the exploration, not trying to make that mine work. Is that how you view it?
Yeah, I see brownfields exploration as an opportunity for looking for other deposits in close proximity to existing mines. And look, the amount of technology that's available these days is amazing. And on the Pegasus discovery, one of the other things that we found around it was veins that were at totally different orientations to the normal subvertical structures, and they in themselves were close to 1 million ounces at the one of the deposits we called the Pode. Kundana is a subvertical vein system, and that's what had always been mined, but we had some drilling that just didn't quite fit that subvertical model, and what we actually found was there was actually a flat-lying structure out to the side that was highly mineralised that had never been identified before. And then in the Brownfields environment, utilising new exploration technologies, we used hard rock seismic, showed a number of these flat-lying structures which have turned into economically viable ore zones. So, that's just another example of looking in that near mine environment, thinking differently and applying new technologies.
Because one of the things I always ponder, especially when you look at Challenger Gold Mine or even that Mount Fisher area where it's so isolated somewhere, and then you ask yourself this question: if you've got something that's pumping that amount of ounces out of the ground, surely the system is much bigger than just one spot, right? And then that opens up the area for potential, right? Assuming you've got the wallet and the ounce to chase it.
No, that's exactly right. And I think the classic example of that's the Golden Mile. I used to work for KCGM for 4 years, and then obviously when I was in Northern Star BD team, we had a few cracks at buying it before we actually got hold of it. And, that deposit itself has, been mined since 1893 and still making discoveries, and Northern Star's doing a great job of unlocking all that potential nearby the mine that has been overlooked. So even in something that's been drilled, and the Golden Mile, Australia's most famous gold deposit, they're still making discoveries within 3 kilometres of the head frame. It's just amazing that you wouldn't expect that, but it just shows you that once you've got the system, and that is one of the best systems in the world, you're always going to find more mineralisation hanging around it.
Coming to your FireFly, as we said, you obviously looked at what you've done over your career, and then when we spoke about FireFly, I kind of know the story, but I didn't go real in detail until you started talking to it. Just give us a rundown on what's happening there.
Yeah, well, we picked up the asset out of administration 2 years ago to this month, and what we saw there was a brilliant ore body that had been totally set up in the wrong way, with a lack of infrastructure, a lack of investment in drilling, and just everything you could do to really crucify the economics of a deposit was done. But back to the fundamental geology, back to the fundamental mining experience, we could see that there was a potentially very, very large scale copper operation there. Steve, Mike, myself, we've really raised a lot of money, we've invested in drilling, we've made discoveries, and we're really now showing that this is a world-class deposit that can be a significant copper producer, and there's just nothing like this on the ASX. So, it's been a great journey so far, but a long way to go.
Northern Star, do you think they are our generation version of Western mining? Because Western mining has always been touted as the school of mines, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
100%. And look, in those early days of Northern Star, and I come in a little bit later, obviously, after they made the Barrick acquisitions, and then just before Jundee was bought and before the merger with Saracen, but the mindset was something different. The people there were fantastic, between Bill and Stu and Stralo and Luke, really great people. And I think, understanding that way of thinking is critical in success. And you're seeing everyone spread out now and do their own thing. Like you're seeing, Luke Cray doing a great job with Orabanda. You're seeing Stralo. I know it's been challenging with Bellevue lately, but there's no one better to turn it around than Stralo. You're seeing Shawnee Day go out after Telfer. We all worked together very, very closely in the early days of Northern Star. As mentioned before, Simon was there. Even Tim Lannery's doing a great job at Andy and Silver at the moment, and he came from the Saracen side of things. So Look, I think that the culture, the mindset, the understanding of mining is a key thing, and an understanding of the importance of geology as well. And I just think that group was pretty special, and yeah, it's great to see everyone go out and have success after that.
Yeah, I must admit, ever since I've started Samso and writing a book more, especially in the last 12 months, and starting up this exploration discovery series and things like that, I really have a great appreciation of what you guys do in terms of that side of things. I have great fascination about exploration, obviously, but it's a different art. It's a different kind of game altogether, right?
Yeah.
I would even use, as we were talking about rugby, it would be not rugby union and league, but it's more like rugby and maybe hockey or something. It's completely different, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of fundamentally the same, but
yeah,
it's just the way you do things.
No, that's right. And I think what was drummed into us really early was that it's a business. It's not just a science experiment. So everything that we're working towards is actually finding a mine, building a mine, not just out there having some geological fun, So that's where the focus is, on discovering ore bodies, not mineralisation. That's a big distinction to make. And I think, the Northern Star culture was get in there, do it, run at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I think bite off more than you could chew was something that Bill used to say, and then chew harder. That sort of philosophy is, something that's it's highly successful.
I think that makes a difference. I think that statement you made there, chew harder, is where the difference is created between those that get it done and those that couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
Because when they bite off more than they chew, they see that as a problem, right?
Yeah. And look, my comment on Northern Star also was there's a really good blend of personalities. Like, in my view, and they'll probably kill me for saying this, Bill was an ideas man and throwing out all the crazy stuff, and Stu was a really good operator in terms of, okay, well, how are we going to make this happen? Like, very focused, whereas Bill was throwing the weird ideas out there, and it was a great combination. It was like yin and yang, and it worked pretty well back in the early days of Northern Star.
Yeah, I guess that's the DNA that came out of Northern Star, the DNA that came out of Western Mining,
yep,
and things like that works. Look, we're all sort of at the sensei level of our age, I guess. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
To the new generation of guys coming up, what would your words of wisdom to them?
My words of wisdom to those guys would be, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. I think one of the things that made the team that we had in Kalgoorlie exceptional was the fact that those guys were willing to relocate and live in Kalgoorlie. It was all residential, and what I find now is a lot of people they want the Perth office jobs. They want to sit in front of the computer and think that's where discoveries are made. But the advice I'd give those guys is make sure you don't forget the fundamentals, which is getting out into the field. Don't be afraid to uproot your life for a couple of years. It's not forever. Go and live in a place like Kalgoorlie, get that good experience under your belt, and it'll set you up for the rest of your career. And just the more geologists you can talk to, the more mentorship you can get, the different way of looking at things and hearing different ideas. I think that's critical, and you don't get that sitting in an office in Perth, I can tell you that.
I think it really boils down, again, I like the statement that you just made, the chew harder concept, right? Because a lot of people just see everything as a problem, whereas you need to really look at it and say, well, what is the potential solution to this? Like how you guys did with Pegasus is mate, what if that, or what if that, and give it a go, I guess.
That's exactly right. And look, that Pegasus discovery team, and it was a team effort. Like, there was no single person that discovered that thing. We had some great engineers in Rob Smith and Jamo. We had some awesome geologists that have done really good things since. Rick's running his own business out of Kalgoorlie. You got Dan Doran, who's running geology for Great Boulder, that have done some great things. You had Jono Goff that was heavily involved in Musgrave. You got Andrew Barker that's involved with Maronan. So, it makes me really proud as a manager to see a lot of those guys that I actually physically interviewed as graduates, like Dan, brought them on, and it's just awesome to see them doing great things and taking little bits and pieces of that mindset with them onto their next jobs. It's a pretty rewarding part of the job.
Yep. Look, thank you, Darren. Thanks for sharing the whole Pegasus story and allowing me to document all that. Any last words before we head off?
No, look, thanks a lot for having us, Noel. And I think it's just a great example of persistence and looking at things differently. So encourage all the other geos out there to get out and do the same thing. The industry needs it.
Okay, look, again, guys, thank you for sitting through 40 odd minutes of our gibberish, and again, help us support our channel and what we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.